Welcome to Franchising Stronger Together. I'm your host, Red Boswell, president of the International Franchise Professionals Group, IFPG. We're joined today by Steve Hart, co-founder and CEO of Property Management Incorporated, PMI. Welcome to the call today, Steve.
Thanks, Red. Thanks for the invite.
You know, when I got to that I thought, is it incorporated? Is it? But I'm notorious for messing things up. At least I got your name right.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, we go by PMI or Property Management Inc.
Good. Well, thank you for being on here, Steve, and sharing with the franchise community. As we get started, remind us, where are you located and how are you and the family holding up?
We're located in the huge metropolis of Lehi, Utah. I know most of you out there probably have no idea where that is. It's between Salt Lake City and a city called Provo in Utah, right in between. We're about 20, 30 minutes south of Salt Lake. And the family is doing well. You know, I've got a wife and four sons. My boys are between the ages of 10 and 18, and it seems like it's been busy business as usual. You know, PMI, we did a work from home concept during the quarantine that worked out really well for us as a franchisor and for our franchisees as well. So I found myself just working from home, and it felt like business as usual other than trying to keep the kids out and the noise down while I was on calls and things. But I think the biggest workload was on my wife, who had to kind of carry those kids through the homeschooling part. Man, that was a workload for her and the kids.
I am
we made it through all right.
How many you got? You got between 10 and 18? You got 3?
4 boys.
4. Nice.
Yes.
Full house. I'm right there with you. I got 3 between 13 and 17.
Mm-hmm.
So, and
right there.
We got to talk offline. In 4 weeks from now, I'm going to be probably 5 miles from your house. We're staying there a couple of days, going to do some fly fishing. Looking forward to it. Well, so before we get rolling on how you guys were impacted by this crazy time we're living in, who is PMI? What do you do?
Yeah, great question. You know, most people have no idea who Property Management Inc. is. They have no idea there's even such thing as property management franchises. You know, it's sad. If I were to go out to an average American and ask them to name a national real estate brand, they could probably name off 10, 5 or 10. If I asked them to name a national oil change shop, they could probably do the same, or even a national gym, they could do that. But if you ask them, name a national property management brand, no one could do that. And so Property Management Inc. is dedicated to being the world's premier real estate management brand. And we've created a really unique opportunity for people to get into property management and to do it right. See, the problem with property management in our industry is it's so fragmented. It's dominated by mostly mom and pops that sometimes they're realtors, sometimes they're real estate investors that find themselves managing property somehow. And then they decide, hey, I'm kind of doing this. I might as well do it as a career. And there's little training in our industry. And it just makes the perfect opportunity for people to stumble into it, but not really have resources to learn and train and to have proper systems to do it well. And so what PMI has done is come into that such a fragmented space and created a national brand with all the tools, the training, the support, the technology to be able to really help our franchisees be a leader. And a key component to what we do is we don't just focus on residential property management. We have what we call the 4 pillars of property management that our franchisees can choose from. Now, typically, they just choose one pillar. They start with one pillar at a time until they're proficient in that pillar, and then they can expand or do what we call bolting on a pillar. Mm-hmm. But we have a residential property management pillar. That's your long-term residential management, like your single-family homes and housing, things like that. Then we have commercial property management. That might be strip malls and retail and Class A, Class B business buildings that our franchisees can manage. Then we have the association or HOA management market. Huge market in and of itself. In fact, each of these pillars is almost their own franchise. And then lastly, our most recent pillar that we added is short-term rental, or better known as vacation rental management. And
how many locations do you have?
We have about 270 unique franchise locations, and those franchisees are operating in at least one pillar, some of them up to all four, but typically 1 to 2 pillars is what an average franchisee will be participating in.
So in the climate we're getting out of, man, travel was totally demolished, right? So that fourth pillar probably was like the fourth toothpick at the for a while. How did the overall organization fare?
Yeah, funny you bring that up. First of all, property management's a great industry because it's 1/3 of our country here in the U.S. Rents their residential unit that they're living in. 1/3. So, and in some cities, it's even higher, upwards of 45 to 50% are rentals. So our industry, we call it recession resistant, almost recession proof. And after going through this COVID pandemic, we're even saying that our industry is COVID resistant because our franchisees and our business did so well. Maybe I'll talk a little bit about that later on. We did so well through the pandemic, with the exception, as you brought it up, of that short-term rental pillar. With Airbnb canceling all reservations pretty much throughout the country, it was really hard on our short-term rental pillar franchise.
No doubt that was probably the smallest pillar anyway. So
it's our newest, it's small. We've got about 50 franchisees participating in that pillar, and it was brutal on them. We have some very large short-term rental franchisees, some of them with 100, 200, what we refer to as keys under management. And, they got hit hard. We're not going to hide from that. But boy, our industry really fared well. Most of our franchisees, it was business as usual. And that's what we love about property management. It doesn't really matter if the economy's hot, the stock market's up or down, whether it's an election year or not, people need a place to live. And even if there's a recession, it typically means people lose homes, unfortunately, and move to rentals. And when that happens, there's even more demand for property management. And so we really thrive in tough markets. We even thrive in booming markets. And so, the property management industry has continually grown as a whole, since they started tracking. There's more people renting today in the United States than there ever has been.
So commercial and residential. On the commercial side, we're hearing every day about renegotiating with the landlords and getting deferments and getting forgiveness and working on renegotiating leases, et cetera. Is that impacting you at all? And is it impacting you on the residential side too? Are people renting houses trying to renegotiate that during a tough time? How's that work?
Boy, when you remember when the pandemic first started and the news started talking about, hey, we're gonna be, anyone that's renting is gonna be able to waive their rent for a month or two. And man, when we first started hearing that, you can imagine as property managers, we were shaking in our boots. But it didn't happen, and it can't really happen. See, most people that own these rental units are guys like you and I, Red. I mean, we're just investors, and we have mortgages on those rental units. And so the government can't just say, hey, renters get to live free for the next couple months, because what are you going to tell to the guys that have to make that mortgage? Someone's got to make that mortgage payment. And so it doesn't really work like that. And we were happy to see that, the government didn't back any kind of, free rent for the pandemic period or anything like that.
And did the franchisees see a big dip in revenue at all? I mean, you've talked about they weren't impacted much except the ones on that fourth pillar. What did your overall organization, how were they impacted? And then what did you do to help?
Yeah, we were gearing up for that. We tried to stay out in front of this movement as quick as we could when we heard the pandemic roll out, and we saw what was happening, and everyone was so afraid of what was going to happen. And we did daily calls with our franchisees. Our CFO ran daily calls that were helping them and educating them with guidance into the PPP loans and grant programs. And because we were so far out in front and educating our franchisees on those programs, we were typically the first ones, or our franchisees were typically the first to apply, and the majority of our franchisees got those funds. And we feel that was because of them being part of our franchise and us just being out in front of that. Same thing with in regards to the property management side. You know, some of the franchisees got really nervous and, hey, what am I going to do when I need to make exceptions? And we rolled out programs and unique training weekly to help our franchisees educate their renters, work with their owners. In many places, we did have to create unique programs. You know, places like New York that were hit really hard, our franchisees did have to make some exceptions and have new policy and things like that. And so we helped them with that as well.
So you obviously, you and your team stepped up, you put in the overtime to support your franchisees. Some of them struggled, some of them made out a lot better than others. Did you choose to do any kind of royalty deferment or abatements on your side? I mean, most stores I talked to did not, because, you know, you're impacted just like they're impacted. You're working harder than ever. You're supporting them in so many ways. But I'm just curious, how did you handle when no doubt somebody in that 200 plus franchisees said, hey, can you hook us up with some royalty help?
Yeah, great question. And we, you know, as the CEO, that was the first thing that I was thinking, man, we are going to have to, you know, do some things like that. And I just could see the red and the bleeding, you know, because of what could possibly happen with that kind of thing. You know, you can't just tell one franchisee we're going to give them a discount. You know, you got to be fair to everyone. And so fortunately for us, and mainly because of the industry that we're in, just being so solid and consistent, our franchisees, for the most part, hardly even had a bump in their revenues. And so we were kind of preparing. We had a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C, and we stayed with plan A. And we were fortunate to do that, knock on wood. Yeah.
Wow. Well, what about on the FranDev side? You know, you can't exist real long without some FranDev. So what happened to the folks that were in process, and then what's your pipeline look like now?
Yeah, March is one of our biggest months in franchise sales, and it's kind of because the timing of the year, but it also has to do with when our franchise disclosure document and our new franchise agreement rolls out every year on April 1st. And so we have a big March typically, and where we'll do 10 to 15 sales. That's considered pretty good for us in just 1 month's time. And we were planning at the beginning of March, we were planning on a record March for our company, estimating probably around 20 to 25 deals closing in March. And with the pandemic hitting midway through the month, you know, we started seeing the fear, not just in you know, what was going on with our franchise, but in the prospects that were looking at buying. I mean, here these guys were analyzing our franchise for months prior. They were ready to buy, and they were just too afraid. You know, they needed to see what was going to happen with the pandemic. Now, some of them bought. We ended up doing still 10 franchise sales in the month of March, which may be considered very high in our industry. And
that's a good year for a lot of franchisors. You know, 10 in a year is what most people aspire to.
So we felt we had a great March, even amongst what chaos was happening in our country. But yeah, we lost a lot of guys, and I don't want to say lost. We had just a lot of people say, with these unsure times, I just don't feel comfortable in investing in a new business right now. And you can't blame them. You know, what do you say to someone when they say that to you? And so we did push about 10 to 15 franchisees down the road a little bit, and we're still hopeful that they're going to roll in. We ended up doing 5 deals in May, a couple deals in April, which is our slowest month, mainly because of the FDD renewal. But we're planning on a 10 to 12 deal month here in June. But now we're starting to see those people get the confidence back and say, okay, we're ready to move forward.
Nice. Congrats. That's a strong
Thanks.
June, especially with everything going on in this world. Fantastic. Well, Steve, any other thoughts for franchisors out there towards the future? Any predictions, advice you can share with the community?
Well, our model is so unique, and we're just so engulfed in property management, whether it's HOA management, vacation rental, commercial and residential. We're really just honed in on being the very best in our industry in those categories. And so most of my advice, my knowledge really is just around what our franchise does and offers. But what I would tell any other franchisors is be open to change. One thing that COVID did for me and for our company is open our minds. And I think we saw this in a lot of different areas. We saw this in the restaurant industry, especially. But for example, we did a good portion of our training, franchise training, online. But because of COVID, we had to move 100% of it online. Well, that was an eye opener for us. We had to scramble. We had to work hard to get those trainings in place, but we recognized some opportunities of things that we could do that actually worked better by doing them online rather than in person. And same thing with franchise development. We did discovery days only live. When a franchisee didn't get enough meat from the franchise developer and the presentations through our discovery process that they do all online, if that was enough for a franchise candidate, we'd invite them to come to our corporate office for a discovery day. We typically would host those monthly. Well, we did virtual discovery days, Red, over the last couple months, and we've had massive turnouts and really great response. And they may not work as well as meeting people face to face. I still prefer looking someone in the eye and shaking their hands, especially if we're going to go into business together. But hey, it was a great alternative, and I don't think we're ever going to stop doing the virtual discovery days now. I think we'll go back to having the live ones, but I think we'll always do the virtual. And so that's what I'd say to other franchisors, just be open to change. We've learned a lot here at PMI and for the good, and made some really good changes because of our open-mindedness.
Well, Steve, on that training, the virtual training you just shared, you saw some things in that you hope to keep virtual forever. It sounded like they worked out better. Any examples that the franchisors could glean from your online training versus in person and the value there?
Well, I don't know if it's anything unique that we did. We've got about a 60-hour training that we do online, and then we have our franchisees come out for a week to our corporate office, and we
60 hours online, and that's 5 months ago, that's what it was, 60 online plus in person.
Plus a week. Some franchisees can bust through that 60 online hours in 30 hours because a lot of it's kind of projects where they're doing, competitive analysis of what's going on in their territory. And we want them to bring that information to our personal coach and trainer that they're working with so we can make sure we set up their business so it really works for their specific area. Because property management is not the same in Los Angeles as it is in Salt Lake or even in New Jersey. And so we have to be flexible in the way we set up our franchisees. We don't just build a box called PMI and say, jump in. But we do have a lot of required programs. We have what we call the PMI way, which is the way that we do our property management. But our franchisees have the flexibility of really offering owners and tenants custom services. And so that's what we're able to break down with that franchisee during that upfront training and help make sure they get their business set up right.
And so the new ones that have come on during this pandemic, have they done in-person training too, or did it all go virtual?
Just the new franchisees. So just the new guys coming in, we did 100% virtual. So that 1 week that we typically do here at the corporate office, obviously that's what we had to create. That 40 hours that was in person, we had to scramble all our senior management to make sure that was available virtually and online. And it's tough because, part of our online training is we're taking our franchisees to properties. We're showing them what to look for in these rentals. And when they're, showing and leasing, and, we have a lot of hands-on that we do during that week. We had to create that all virtually. And some of it meant that our directors were out there with cameras on mobile showing how to do things. And so again, it ended up working out pretty well to the point where some of the stuff we're going to move over permanently.
Nice. Nice. I'm hearing that a lot of that. So, well, exciting, Steve. Thank you for sharing. I know the franchisors out there no doubt got some nuggets there from you. We appreciate PMI being part of IFPG, and you are impressive growth even during the pandemic, and certainly providing the services to your franchisees that you're providing. We appreciate you. Co-founder and CEO Steve Hart of Property Management Inc., PMI. Thanks again, Steve, for joining Franchising Stronger Together.
Thanks, Red. Appreciate it.